Happy Friday, everybody.
Yeah, good morning, and welcome to another episode of Cloud Foundry Weekly.
All right.
Nikki, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. You're not actually talking to me. You're talking to my AI avatar.
Oh, well, how do you know? How do you know you're actually talking to me and I'm not an AI avatar?
I'm just a head. Can you do that?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't wait for our guest to come on because he's going to do what he did when he did in the pre-show and just, you guys.
Yeah, shake his head at
just,
our silly banter. Exactly.
Right, so first off, well, no, how was your week, man? How was Explore?
Good. So back from Explore, and this is kind of like I think we got a lot of content we'll be covering. Maybe we'll call it Explore More, a little mini series or whatever. But Explore was good. Can't complain. Busy as always. But Vegas is Vegas. Explorers explore, and got a kitten here wanting to join the show. This is I don't know if you've seen Captain Whisker Paws in real life or on show, Nikki, but this is he's really getting me right now. So anyway, I might have to go lock him up out of my office here. But yeah.
Well, so one question for you. Explore was a little bit smaller this year. Did you find that it had a lot more focus with
yeah. So the conversations have been great. A lot of great customer conversations. Met a lot of customers.
Nice.
That I had been working with. See them in person is always cool too. So, the quality, the customer conversation is great. I was able to do a couple mini episodes, joining the Virtually Speaking podcast crew. So those will come out, and we'll get a big shout out to Cloud Foundry Weekly too. So I'll be happy to see those coming out. So it's my days were jam packed, great conversations. Can't complain. So
man, that's awesome. I wish I could have been there. I do like that. I think it's great that we're getting a little bit more focus on the customers, able to meet more, getting a little bit more intimate. So congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah, I can't complain. But how about you? Everything going okay with you?
Yeah, it was good. So we did open source summit and AI dev in the EU. So we were over in Amsterdam for a week. Same thing, a lot of great talks, a lot of good customers. Had a talk with a gentleman. I gave a talk on AI from a peer to peer. And after that talk, there was a guy by the name of Wolfgang Etter who came over, and we had this great conversation about, AI, the future of AI, what we're going to see. And I'll be honest, he kind of blew my mind a little bit. We talked about, I made the comment, well, the one thing that I don't think AI is going to ever have is creativity. And he's like, well, let's talk about that. What is creativity? Well, it can't draw, a Van Gogh. It can't do a Mozart. And he's like, well, but it can. It can draw pictures. It can do stuff. What is creativity? It's however we perceive it. And I was like, oh, right.
Mind blown. Yeah.
Yeah, mind blown.
Cool. All right. How about we bring on our guest and and speaking of AI stuff, we'll start getting into that here. I can click the button here. This cat, man.
We're going to let Captain Whisker Paws bring him on.
Yeah, well, yeah. I really might have to put him away here, but I'll see how long I can hold on to him. Cote, how's it going? Great to join I'm glad you're here again. And tell us what's going on in your neck of the woods.
Well, things are all right. Even though I came back to town a little while last week from a vacation, and the Uber driver told me summer is over, and so but it's nice and sunny today. So that's good stuff. And I think what have I been doing? There's two things. We finally released this paper about why you shouldn't build your own platform, and so I made some videos promoting it. I don't know. That's what you do, right? You make videos.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't really know, and so that's fun to finally get those out there because I actually made them like 3 weeks ago. And I don't know about y'all, but like whenever I make some content, like the longer it takes me to publish it, the more anxious I get and frustrated. So now we got that. And then, well, I guess the reason that you invited me on here is I have a talk in this is Friday. In I don't know, a week and a half where I'm going to go over what platform engineers should do about AI services and what that looks like. And so that's fun to work on. It's nice to do a whole bunch of research and read stuff, and there's a lot of good stuff out there. But the thing that the impression that I get is that there's very few people have been doing anything, so no one knows very much. And then that's what I realized. I know my buddy Nick here, he actually has been doing platform engineering for AI. So that's I don't know. I'm excited to hear from you what it is, so that I can finally write these slides.
Well,
I hope we can help you out there.
Well, I'm gonna put a link in the show notes for your 6 reasons you don't want to build your own, because that was great. Y'all didn't get to see it, but in the pre-show I was telling Cote, I don't know if he feels weird, but I stalk him on LinkedIn. Love his videos. I think everybody should go watch that video.
Yeah, it is great.
It is. Take a bow, Cote. Yeah.
Yes, it is great. All right.
Oh boy.
All right. Well, in order, I guess, to get the vibes flowing here, I'm gonna get a screen share going. Oh, Google Chrome, what are you doing? Come on. What is? Every now and then. All right, now we got the Inception going. Let's get rid of that. Let's do this. All right. Let's make this. All right. So I guess this is we're gonna cherry pick from Tales from Production, Debugging LLMs and Gen AI Apps on VMware Tanzu Platform. I covered this in 20 minutes live, and it was, I thought I had like 30 minutes, and I was like, oh, I only have 20, so I had to cut some of it. But I want to kind of cut in the chase here of like some top things that I've seen, and kind of go from there. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just kind of live commentary from before. But the good old friend, as you say, Cote, Chatty G, helped me make some of these slides.
Who could tell?
Yeah, I know, right? But
hey, at least it's everything right.
Yeah. It took me a few times to be like, no, make this, make this. I need to try this nano banana stuff that I keep hearing about. That seems to be like probably much better at this specific type of image generation. Yes. Shout out to Keith and Abhishek. Yeah, this is early time, and yeah, we're mixing it up. So yeah, great to see you on the show here.
That's why you got to hit that subscribe button and get the bell when you know things are happening.
Exactly. Yeah, well, just like and subscribe, Pillow. You should do that right now. But anywho, the first challenge that we see with and a lot of these tales, let's say, are challenges that we've seen working with our customers directly, because we've been doing this AI thing for, I don't know, a couple years now at this point. And some of the challenges we've seen internally at Broadcom, and just challenges I see running a small data center lab type of thing as well. So first and foremost, we're starting to see more and more this concept of the Enterprise IT Council morphing, or becoming the Enterprise AI IT Council. And what can you get approved or not approved is like the biggest challenge. Like, can you run any of these local models? And if so, what are allowed? And if we look, this is a slide from like a real life customer, right? If they're highly regulated, touching pretty much every sector of the business verticals and such, US based company. Let's look at Meta. So Llama, Mark Zuckerberg's family of models, denied, right? Their AI council denied them, full out, because there's a little bit of clause in the Meta license. It's like, hey, if you're over a certain size, come talk to us. We'll work out some kind of deal. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And it's
right.
kind of loosely defined,
I forget the exact fine print, but I remember, to put this in a nuanced way, I remember having the following thought when I read it. I don't remember the fine print, but thinking that, like, well, I guess every single government in the world is out. Right?
Yeah.
Because I forget the number because I think it's like some number of end users that you have if you're above that. And so it sounds like if you were the government, well, you've got a lot of end users potentially of your service.
A large enterprise, you're just immediately out, right?
Well, if I can interrupt you, Nick, this is great. This is my first question, and
yes, go for
it. It's kind of broad, maybe to narrowing down. It seems like I was talking with some of our coworkers in a yet to be released video interview with them, and they work in some of our coworkers who work with the Department of Defense in the US, those kind of things. And I was saying, like, I know they have all these councils, but like, how do you like not repeat the problem of the Cloud Center of Excellence, which was like, the Cloud Center of Excellence, to be jerky about it, was where excellence went to die. And so like,
yes,
and so it seems like we know that pattern, that like on the one hand you do have to centralize things, you do need policy, right? Like, absolutely. But like, it's how do you make sure that you're actually doing it quick, right? Like, and that you're like, and I don't know, what have you been encountering with people? Do people complain about these internal things, or are they fast enough, or do they complain about them because they're slow, or do they complain about them because they don't like the answers that they give?
Like any good council, they're slow and most likely determine results that are unfavorable or upset some people. So I mean, it is kind of becoming that. I don't know how one can avoid that, because it's just such a common practice in the enterprise of, we need to make a new council and we got to have committees, and
right.
It's just part of the game. And maybe some of the better way to do that is to have it more from a security lens, because the security councils, the security people, are more, I would say, work in a more responsive time manner, because they have like there are CVEs that get launched, and like we have to remediate. Like, there's actually timelines associated to the security principle. So I would say that if it's more of a security based, or the security, because like you see the two camps, right? You see like the corporate security group forming this AI council and leading that governance committee, or you see like the traditional like enterprise architecture, software architecture leading that, and they tend to be a little bit more nebulous, deliberate, slower, so to speak.
Well, that's an interesting. So, no, that's a good theory for the council here. Is like, at the moment, because in these fast changing times, to use all our phrases, like, it's probably good to get the security people involved in approving things, because I'm repeating what you said, but operationally they're fast. They can be fast. And then two, they're probably going to manage the biggest risks that you have. And so like, if you care about like taking advantage of stuff as soon as possible, the security people are probably who you want to go with, versus the enterprise architect types who have a longer term vision and therefore a longer term sort of timeline for things, maybe.
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
so
and I see that there's a lot of fear on this as well, because it's moving so fast and it's so hard to keep up with, that people just don't know what they don't know. And so there's some hesitation in adopting new things because it's hard to keep up with. I mean, we're seeing models being churned out every week. So how do you stay on top of that to approve them? Well, the only way is to dig into it. And this is still new for a lot of people. So it takes time to dig into things and really see what the risk profile is for these.
Yeah. And I mean, and there are some customers that haven't formed these committees at all. So I guess if you haven't yet, and you're in that process, think of this more as it's more of a traditional software architecture, software security of like, I am pulling packages and dependencies from the internet. Right. Security story and a governance story of how you do that, because these are all like these models are packages that you need to pull from the internet somewhere. So like a lot of those, that tool chain that customers have, these models are that's the path they go through, and some of them struggle a little bit, but that's how they get into the organization, and like they can scan it, they can track what's being downloaded, yada yada. But like, in order to get the approval to actually run that, you actually have to have that matching like paperwork of like the AI council has blessed, let's say, Mistral. And specifically because these things are churning so frequently, and like potentially now we're getting like monthly or quarterly drops of like the similar models that go for a family of models or a subset of these models, because once like we're starting to get these like point releases, and you don't want to go back to the council every week or every month and say, hey, Mistral dropped 3.3. Do we need to go, submit a 3-month security review on it again? Like, because by the time it's finished, then it's already old, like outdated type of thing. So that's another key thing is that go for try to in your council committee procedures, go for either like model producer approval or subset of producer family type model approval, so you don't have to go back every month and say, hey, new version dropped, can I get the checkbox again?
And what do you think is like the not bare minimum but the responsible minimum of like parameters that this council is doing? Like you mentioned one already, which is licensing, which is like, great. That
yes,
got it.
Yeah, I think that is the bare minimum of just reviewing the licensing for all of these models and making sure that they jive with your business. Because a lot of you don't necessarily think of that immediately, and if you're just doing this as a home hobbyist, none of those licenses really bother you, right? But as you're doing this as an enterprise, the fine print you might want to read and or at least have your legal people bless it type of thing. Because it could potentially be a problem for you later down the road type of thing. So yeah, that at a very minimum. And then just security of making sure you're getting these models from from your normal software supply chain, and you going through those processes, and having that documentation would be good as well. Now, I'm not going to get too into the whole geopolitical aspect, but that's definitely a big thing as well. Where if we're looking about a US based customer, almost all of our enterprise US customers basically have a full ban on all of the Chinese open source models like Qwen or DeepSeek or Kimi 2 or whatever. And they're all really, really good. I mean, if you look at the top 15 open source models of the local LLM leader, or really, the local LLM leaderboard, they're all Chinese models, right? So
and is the fear of those models that they've been trained to generate malicious responses that will trickle into your enterprise, and then you'll get hacked? Is that what people are freaked out about?
I think a lot of it, it's just illogical fear, to be honest.
Yeah,
but,
I think it's kind of more the fear of, and again, this is an aspect that people have to consider, is what are we giving the models access to? And I think there's more of a fear is our IP going to go somewhere we don't want it to, even though we're trying to isolate it and segment it off with a lot of the Chinese models. But that's a whole other consideration, is okay, what models are we going to bring in, and then what are we going to give them access to, and how are we going to do that?
Right. But then the idea that you're going to download one of these, you know how big they are, Nick, 17 gigabyte files, right? And you download a model, you install it, in order for a model to steal your IP, it's going to have to, how do you say it, exfiltrate? It's got to send it somewhere.
Yeah.
And so therefore, it has to be trained to whenever this response come up, write some code, compile it, go run it in an SSH thing with an open port, upload it through there. And I don't think LLMs do that.
No,
the whole steal your stuff and get it somewhere is ascribing too much functionality to what a model does, right?
Yes.
So
exactly.
it seems like either there's a misunderstanding of what models do that makes people freak out about it, or there's something else that they're worried about.
When you start bringing in a lot of these models, they're bringing in agents as well, and those agents can go do those things.
Right. So if you actually bring code, sure, absolutely. You need to have something, but just purely the model on its own.
Yeah,
I guess
the model on its own won't do anything.
Right? The model can't execute anything, so to speak. It can only tell you stuff.
Right. Yeah, and if you firewall them off,
there's a little bit of a rational fear there. But I think when you start getting into a lot of the enterprises that are doing models, they're looking at what can we do with this. They are bringing in agents, and I think it's more the information that they're worried about, because they're wanting to bring this in for troubleshooting or help desk support, and they want to have access to some of their things internally. They're bringing it in for developers to use. So that is where I think this fear is coming in. And I do think it's a bit irrational, but you look at some of the stuff that's coming through the news, they see stories and I can't remember which company it was, but he went and worked for, I think it was Meta, went and worked for all the code and then uploaded all the code into open source and left the company and disappeared. That's the kind of stuff that people are reading, and it's putting this fear into them about what agents do.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the models on their own are fine. Now, if you start hooking them up to agents and other things, who knows what could happen? But
Right,
it's all
right.
real
No, that
scary.
makes okay. Got it. Yes.
Now, another point I want to bring up too is that if we look at even like Gemma or Gemma from the Google family, that seems like that's got some fine print around like do no harm, and like if you're in the government, like maybe the defense sector, that's probably gonna not jive so well. Now, not to say like these customers are like building like Terminator robots or whatever, but it's just like all these licenses just like immediately like the legal department just throw like we can't do
Right,
business
right,
like
right.
this because it
Well,
violates all of
once
the
once you
license, right?
once you inject subjectivity and morality into like a license, you're kind of like, well,
Yeah,
but
we're like we're
whose?
not touching this because we it's all
Yeah, yeah. You have to define what the rules are. Okay.
exactly.
And
And
that
then
means keeping legal teams just awake at night because you've got to dig in. You've got to really understand what the licenses says. And some of these licenses, coming at it from a common man point, they're confusing. So,
Mhm.
they've got to consider, hey, yes, we're using some of these privately, but what's the license model? Is this something that's going to bite us in the financial back end?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I like your point here, Nick, that
Yes.
you should get the security people involved, and then as Nikki just reinforced, get the lawyers involved, and like
Yes.
at the minimum do that, and
Yes.
then focus on a process by which you can like approve things quickly, which might mean
Mhm.
like just categorically eliminating other stuff. Like I'm just making something up, but you could say like we're only going to approve models from Anthropic and Google. That's it.
Mhm.
But
Right.
when new models come, we can fast track those because we've narrowed down what we're doing, and we can look at that or whatever,
Yeah.
something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think too the big thing too that a lot of people are latching on to the truly Apache 2 license models. Like Mistral has a few. Now they also have that a few that aren't. But then like GPT OSS came out from OpenAI, and like I really appreciate that they actually released that as a true Apache 2 license model. You can use it for business. You can use it for anything you like. It's it's the base Apache 2 model, and that's really I think going to help out a lot of people because it's meeting a lot of requirements of now. It's it's the kind of trusted brand of OpenAI. There's people know who that company is. Some of these other companies are you know harder to get through from a business perspective, but people don't know who they are, that type of thing, like who's a Mistral or what, that type of thing. So
Perfect.
that's going through. So that, yeah, you gotta go through the council. This is just kind of an example of from one of our customers, and I'm happy to report that that under review has now been approved. So they are using GPT OSS now as well. So what's next here?
Well, and there's one more thing while we're talking about it. I'd love to
Mhm.
get Charles' opinion. Is we're watching. There's lawsuits coming up about how these companies are training the models and whether they're using IP. And there's also a worry of, is that going to leak over to people that use it? Is that something that
Mhm.
and I'm not throwing out facts here. I'm just using this as an example. But hey, OpenAI, went out in New York Times. They used that to train it, and then there's a lawsuit that's going to come in. You incorrectly used our information, our IP to train this. Does that
Mhm.
have bleed over into companies that want to use that model? And that's unsettled business right now. But
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting to watch the legal landscape as this stuff evolves and becomes more and more mature and becomes more and more widespread.
Yeah. That's a whole nother ball of wax that we'll have to keep in track and see how it goes.
I say we throw out, if there's anybody from legal that's out there in the audience, or if you know anybody from legal, that would be an interesting show, Nick, is to have
Mhm.
somebody come on and talk about the legal aspects and things that are going on legally with AI and models in general.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be a good show. I try to stay away from legal folks. But
I'm
hey,
with you.
I get it. It's a good talk.
Yeah.
All right, what's next? Yes, the enterprise IT firewall. So that's another challenge here to work through. And to sum it up, and you're most likely in a state now, if you're in enterprise, that a lot of these sources that you pulled the models are just already blocked, right? So like the Llama libraries, Hugging Face, you're gonna have to go through some process to get your normal software bill of materials to download that. A lot of people are using, like, let's say an Artifactory type thing where they're using their traditional software mechanism, downloader mechanism, and repository, so to speak. And they have integrations with Hugging Face and such. But we've seen too with multiple customers using that. These models aren't really the type of files that Artifactory is built to store and maintain. So
Mhm.
you're gonna have to work with the Artifactory team. You probably have to, give it more resources, change some settings, because Artifactory's kind of used to pulling a lot of many small files. Like, let's go download these like hundreds of npm dependencies to like run my Node.js app, or Java dependencies. They're small little files. Not like go download this like 60 gig model. That's a
Mhm.
single file, right? And that's there's file limitation issues that you can default change, and so that's just something to have to keep in mind. And a lot of people, after they get through that process, they get through the approved way to get that model in, that they the long-term storage is maybe like an S3 share or internal S3 share or file share, because even then it's like that you need to move them somewhere, unless you have Artifactory really beefed up or whatever. I think there's many different uh, things that do that type of flow.
Like are there a lot of like internal model registry things that
I
that
mean,
are out there? It seems like an obvious thing to like try to make money off of as far as
so like
productizing.
in some cases, like you could pull like a fully compact Docker file of the model, like maybe like an NVIDIA NIM. So like our friends in the VCF world have the VMware Private AI, which was just announced that it's just now part of VCF at Explore. So that's pretty cool news. They have a model store they're working on based on Harbor, so that's a path that you could take. So if
Right.
your images are like OCI compliant images, like you could go down like the how do you store your Docker file path. So that be something too to look at. But then if you're not doing that, like you could just be like pulling the files so directly like via Hugging Face, like mirroring those repositories. Like it's more of like a git pull push style, or like a Hugging Face CLI. Those aren't
Yeah.
encompassed in Docker files, so like that's kind of where it gets a little nebulous. Of like, yeah, we're all still learning about the best way to store these files, because none of the existing tools, to be honest, are really well equipped to handle it, so to speak.
Now would it be bad to just have like a network share drive that has files on it, or what? Like you would have the council, and they were like, here's 5 20 to 50 gigabyte files. These are the approved models. There's your registry. Like you can just right click in Google Drive and download them. I mean, I'm being ridiculous about it, but you can just download and use that model.
Yeah, so that is, I think, the longer term path, especially where if you have something like the private AI services model registry, like you could say, hey, we have this approved model, and then there's like image layer like enhancements that can do. So if there's like duplicate layers, like you don't have to store like them all the same, like it does some like space efficiency stuff. So that's a path. But again, it just depends on like how you're expecting the file, because like if you're using like working with a llama is basically like a Docker like wrapper on top of something called Llama CPP, but it in an air gap scenario, which most of our customers are air gapped, you're gonna basically want a file called .gguf file, which isn't a Docker file per se. So it's like that, that's just more of a generic, I just need like a big old web server thing to run this type of thing. So the jury's still out, but and if you're mirroring Hugging Face, like Artifactory will work too, because it's more of a like git pull of like, hey, I wanna like go to this Hugging Face repo and pull all these model files. And like if you're not using a llama, like maybe something like the VLM, you're pulling a bunch of like tensor files, and it's like it's like you're git cloning this like giant repository that has like huge files in it, and like like git LFS issues to deal with and all these things. So that's again like not quite the whole like shove this all in a container. Especially as you get with a larger model, so you want to shove that all in a container. Then the container is like ginormous, and then you have like huge container problems of like it's going to take like 30 minutes to pull on the network.
And then how about, I suppose, when you talk with people, are they bringing in all of their? You remember several years ago when everyone was talking about supply chains all the time?
Yes.
Like are they bringing in these concerns of like, okay, here's why you don't just like download it from Google Drive, is because you want a record of who downloaded it when, so that you have like the provenance or whatever of
Precisely.
that, like, and so
Yeah,
that you can track this stuff, and then you're
Yes.
getting into like all sorts of pipeline conversations and stuff. But is that on
Yes.
people's minds when they're thinking about using these or
Yes, yeah, I know, like that's like definitely the first thing. And that's why it's a lot of people are pulling them through their traditional software supply chain, like an Artifactory or like a
so it hooks
Heartbeat or
up into
whatever,
all
right?
your supply chain bomb
Yeah.
stuff or whatever?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. This is basically in the end of the day, you're just downloading software that's ginormous compared to what you've usually downloaded.
Right.
So
Well, and we
that's
look at this
everything.
from different scopes. So y'all look at using the models from an application standpoint. When I'm looking at models and I'm looking at agents, I'm coming from the developer productivity and enhancement
Mhm.
view. And that's one of the things, going back, kind of tying this back to security and the councils, is with that fear, we're seeing the emergence. We've all known about shadow IT for a long time, but shadow AI is now becoming a thing. And we're
Mhm,
starting to
mhm.
see a prevalence of things like deep computing coming out with a risk-based, low-cost laptop that can support a $7 billion to $14 billion or billion parameter model. So we're starting to see where, if this desire for enterprises to be secure is actually making them less secure because developers want to play with this stuff, and
Yeah.
they're starting shadow AI. They're starting to download this stuff locally. They're starting to go out and get their own machines, and they're doing things with their code that IT departments and security departments would absolutely not be happy with, but they're doing it because the security team is either fearful or they're taking such a long time to integrate at least some tool. The developers are looking for that pressure relief valve. They're looking for a way to go out and play with AI, to use some of these models, especially some of the coding models. And
Right.
so they're injecting risk into the enterprise because enterprises are trying to be secure and not giving developers that path.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a valid point of like you pull a lot of this on your local machine and run it, but then it's like your enterprise probably has not allowed those tools. You're violating your corporate AI
Yep.
legal policy of like thou shall not run AI tools in your laptop, and then you run risk of getting like in trouble, so to speak. So
You'd
yeah,
be
I mean that's
surprised how
definitely
many
a thing,
customers I'm
right?
talking to that are actually seeing those problems today. I mean, there's
Hmm.
a lot of companies out there that are, okay, how do we solve this? And
Yeah,
yeah, we can talk about, how you put security around it, how do you put guardrails around it. But you got to come into, when you're looking at AI, you've got to come into it with a game plan in mind. A lot of companies are just trying to bolt this stuff on, and it's
hmm
not working for them. And I see a lot of, when we see the hesitance to using AI, I'm seeing a lot of that coming from, they're trying to bolt things on, security slowing them down, or there's
right,
fear about what we're going to give access to. So I would say, I would throw into that bare minimum of what we were talking about earlier. You have to come into this with a game plan in mind and how you're going to do this, and build an
right,
infrastructure that's ready for it.
exactly. Yeah, and I think some of that too of what we see in the Tanzu land is that we built this originally for like the app space, but like people are immediately like, all right, well now I can use this as a secure way to like hook this to like a local model up to some of my developers IDEs as well to like have a more secure path to do that too. So
Mhm.
um you know it's definitely something we're keeping track of, but yeah, that's something that I think everyone's seeing as an issue, and we're all trying to figure it out.
Mhm.
All right, what's next? Ah, yes, the LLM crushing the RTX 3090. So this is one of my favorite Chatty G images. But when you're trying to, once we talked about the legal, the AI councils, the committees, now getting through your software supply chain. So in theory, now once you get to this point, you have a model that's been blessed, and you have the actual software bits inside your organization. Now you have to take said giant software bits and put it somewhere and run it, and that's where some of the challenges come into play. But yes, let's see here. So what are my talking points? So like a lot of people I've talked to kind of get to this point of like, oh well, like I don't have any, like I don't have any GPUs, or I have very few GPUs, and that's a common practice that we're seeing. But you know, try to make the most of your infrastructure. A lot of our customers have large compute farms that, associated with their Tanzu platform deployments. So we pretty much all cases our customers start with CPU inference and prototype, test things out. Some of these models you can kind of get It'll probably be slow, but like you can get a somewhat of a working prototype built on built on the same model that you would run on a GPU, just on a very, constrained CPU to speed. But if you don't have any GPUs, it's hard to get money for GPUs, but showing a working prototype of your application running on CPUs will help out make that business case, right? Of hey boss, we got this working prototype, but in order to scale for production, we need to go buy some real GPUs and stuff and go from there, right? So that's a common use case we see. Also, there are some models that work fine on embedding, like some work fine on CPUs, like embedding models work pretty well. They're much smaller. You can, embedding's more of a big batch process. So if it's not immediately returned, it's okay. You send a big batch of data to get embedded. That's quite fine. And like we have customers running embedding workloads, embedding LLMs on CPU, like in production, just fine. And obviously, those customers who have GPUs in production too are running others as well. But you can do some things with your existing hardware. And as I was talking with someone at Explore, like we're kind of like seem to be like on this precipice of a large hardware refresh in most cases. So a lot of our customers are getting brand new, machines coming on board. So they're getting, much newer CPUs, much higher system RAM bandwidth. So like those CPU models or those models that are smaller, the SLMs, the small models are probably going to run a lot better even on these newer machine types to even get maybe a closer to more performant prototype, even a small scale production run, depending on the app use case. And if you're just doing like a small type of test and a very narrow focused workload, you may be able to get away with that. And if you pick the right type of model, go with there, because these newer CPUs that are launching from Intel and AMD have better instruction sets to handle some of these matrix calculations, and then obviously they ship with higher system RAM speed, so the faster the RAM, the better, more tokens per second you get. And that's really why the GPUs are so popular, is because the GPU RAM or VRAM is so much more faster than the system RAM typically. But again, make the most of what you have. And also, like, you can get some cheaper GPUs like an L4 or T4. T4 is kind of old at this point, but you can pretty much retrofit any existing host that you have with a entry grade GPU. You don't have to go buy H100s or H200s to get off, right off the bat, or really ever. You can get your existing gear and like maybe spend a couple grand and put it, you can get these low profile GPUs that don't require a whole lot of, um, overhead in the host itself. They don't require like liquid cooling or special airflow or anything like that. You can just go pop it in an open PCIe slot and then start using it there as well, to even help out some of those prototypes as well. Or just say, hey, like, an L4 would probably make a pretty good use case, especially with some of these newer models. Because another thing I haven't really talked about is that the more and more the new model architecture is called a mixture of experts, where they only activate a subset of the full parameter. So it acts like a much smaller model, although it might be like the GPT OSS, like 20B is only using like 2 or 3 billion. I can't remember the exact number of active parameters. So it runs quite well.
So on the GPU talking, so Cote, Nick, you are both closer to the hardware than I am just by virtue of the parent company. But are you seeing customers have a little bit of hesitancy on this also because of the cost of GPUs? If they're bringing GPUs in and they're wanting to utilize them, they're buying a lot of over provisioning, right? They're having to buy equipment that's going to sit there idle. Are you seeing where customers are a little bit hesitant because of the cost of entry on this?
Potentially. I mean, it's really kind of all over the board. We have some customers who are like, hey, we got like 3 racks of H100s. I was like, congratulations. Like, let's get to work, right? Or like, a lot of customers too, like we have some old VDI GPUs that we're not really doing anything with. Can we use those too? Or, I picked up a couple of T4s to like test out. Can we do that? Like, it's just really make the most of what you have. And, I think the more of the conversation is like when you go to that next refresh, maybe you can start to get that, because like the budget, the budget flow for these big capital purchases are 6 months to a year. Like you got to get in whenever the next budget cycle is. So it's like, oh, we may be like 3 months away before we can even like submit the request to get the funding, right? Like, and then that may, it's all about, working with you. You got a lot of customers could potentially, cherry pick. They might have a little discretionary fund of like, oh, I can go drop, $10,000 buying some smaller GPUs, or really used GPUs too. By the way, like you can get T4s for like $500 on eBay. I bought a lot of them. You can get L4s for maybe like $2,000 a piece on eBay, or you can go through some of these. There are like hardware extended warranty, third-party extended warranty for your company's resellers that you could also probably go through and get probably pretty good deals on. Some of these higher end companies are just discarding these lower end GPUs, but for inference and for maybe smaller models, you could probably get something for not hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, in the tens of thousands of dollars range to retrofit some of your existing infrastructure without going that full. I need to go buy new hosts, new racks, new power, all that jazz. So out of your normal infrastructure acquisition workflow.
And so first of all, this is pretty much all if you're not just going to use the public services, right? Like here, we're talking about you're building up your own stuff.
Yes.
Which is anyway. So yes. And then second, like to not pull together, but like what y'all are saying is making me think that the strategy someone should use. And then my third question is going to be like, who's the someone? But the strategy that someone should use is, let's start with what we have, and that is what we can do, right? So like if we don't have, like, I don't know all the stuff because I'm not a hardware person, but if we don't have all the fancy GPUs, we can't be running like GPT-5 or whatever. We're going to be running like 3 or whatever it is we're going to be doing. I get confused about all the models.
Yeah, but you can get started with the new GPT-OSS model on relatively low infrastructure, right? Like, but like the decision the decision you have to make is, if you're running it on your own, is based on the hardware that we currently have, and I assume the networking, whatever, based on the infrastructure that we currently have, you've got to do some scoping to say what's possible at the scale that we need. Whereas scale is like not only latency, but also like number of people who would be using it. And you got to do that analysis before you do it, because you don't want to do the other way where you're like, we want to be running these models, now what? Because you're just going to find out that you can't really do it at all. And then so the third thing is like, so who's in charge of this? Like, if I'm a platform engineer that was previously like, running my Cloud Foundry instance and making sure Postgres is running, like now I've got to know hardware and all of that stuff, or is there another group who does it, or like who does that work? Yeah, so I mean, if I talk to it in the lens of the Cloud Foundry ecosystem and our Tanzu customer base, so we have our platform engineers, are running the Cloud Foundry or Tanzu platform deployments. They typically will interact with maybe a hypervisor or IaaS or VMware, VCF, vSphere team, right, as like a peer of their infrastructure group. And, they have before made requests of like, hey, I would like, X number of racks for my availability zones to deploy, the PaaS and all my databases and all that jazz. So that's kind of like a normal flow. In some cases, they may be similar. Like I was like the VMware architect and kind of platform architect role at the same time. So like I kind of sat in both spaces, but I mean it could be most cases it's split into different teams, or like within the same organization, so they're very closely related. They know they can go walk over either the physical or virtual cube and ask for stuff, and in most cases what I found with everybody's just generally interested in this is an exciting thing. So like people like want to do this anyway, right? Like they're like, hey, I want to go work on this like AI project. And people are gonna be like, well, that's better than whatever crap I had on my backlog anyway. Let's go do that, right? Like it's something of high interest. So like in most cases, I think everyone is just like on board to try it out, and like they're all kind of interested to see how they can space and enable their, because they at the end of the day, the VMware or IaaS team or the PaaS team, they both serve the same customers. They're both serving developers of their organization. So they're both kind of have the same goal of like, we want to make them successful and,
So
The
so
more
basically,
services we can offer internally, the better successful they are as well.
so in order to get the hardware, you would follow the same path that you would just to get like more storage. Like
Yes,
you're gonna talk to whoever's not judgmentally in directionality, but you're gonna talk to
Right.
below you the IaaS people, and the IaaS people might then go talk to hardware people, right? Like
Yeah.
whatever that relationship is. But as a platform engineer, it's just like getting more storage. I mean, with the, as you're saying, people want to work on that and the AI stuff, but you're not really going to have to, like, as you're saying, you don't need to start setting up eBay scanners to find these things. That's someone else's job.
Yeah, I mean, most typically you're gonna have your normal hardware vendors that you go through, and you're like, "Hey, can I get a quote for maybe some L4s?" If you can't do that, do you have maybe you have another vendor that might be able to apply?
Is determined to be on this show.
Yeah, I'm gonna put a cat up for eBay auction here after the show. But yeah, like it's a normal flow. It's just another piece of hardware, and you
Right.
know,
Okay.
go from there. But I guess the biggest thing is that a lot of people are working with, and every now and then we'll hit a customer. They're just like, Psh, AI, we don't have good hardware. We can never do that. And like, maybe let's take a look at what you have and see, right? Like people just, avoid the throw your hands up. I don't have that. I'm not going to touch it type response, I guess.
I think it's interesting, and you kind of brought this up. Right now people are getting started. They are using some of the public things. I do think the prediction that was made, private AI is going to become more important, not only from a risk profile, perspective, but also just from a how do we fine tune this for our stuff. And again, I'm coming at this from a different perspective than you two are. I'm coming at this from the developer perspective, not necessarily the app perspective. But we're going to see, the SMLs become, I think, more prevalent as we start seeing specialization of what they're going to do with those LLMs. From a development standpoint, we're going to see private AI become more. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not going to use public models, but they're going to be bringing it in internally. They're going to be, hosting those things with their own data instead of something that going out. There's a big difference between bringing this into your data center and posting some stuff into ChatGPT or Cloud on the web. And I think a lot of people are seeing that today. And it is. I mean, there's also the hardware fear because, a lot of people, you go out and look at some of these servers out there. We were looking at them and some in OSS, 252,000 for the server to bring in a good GPU for them. That's setting a lot of people to start wondering, am I ever going to be able to get into this? And the interesting thing is this is the biggest shift that we've seen in software development in probably my lifetime. So you've got all these paradoxes that are happening, which is everybody's adopting it, but we've got reports that are saying it's making developers slower. It's actually causing, more harm. And then you've got other reports that are saying, well, this is improving productivity, 50% and giving developers back 10 hours of their week every week. How do you make sense of that? What do you think, Nick, Cote? I mean, how do you kind of square the circle on some of these things where we're getting different reports from different sides?
Well, I mean, I think it's really just kind of how you view it. And I think some people are saying I can't do this. In order to do this, I need millions of dollars in hardware. And, we're never going to get that approved. Right. And that, this whole talk, I kind of preface this whole talk track is around me working with customers, running models on their own infrastructure, on their own, four walls per se, because they have, general security issues with, just like a lot of them have thou shall never public cloud with certain sectors of their business. The same thing applies, if not even more. Thou shall never, public AI with this data set, or this whole line of business can never interface outside these full air gap. So that's kind of where I'm working at. But you don't have to, we are seeing active multiple customers build POCs on whatever they have, whether it be CPUs or not great, relatively small old GPUs, just to get that prototype built. And then that conversation of hey, we have this working, we think we can scale it out to X number of users, or we want to take this app and scale it to 15,000 internal users. We need to actually buy hardware to support it now, but we have it working, and we have the first test customer base using it, and it's working, it's doing what we want it to do. We can then, maybe do some napkin math. We think the TCO is going to be this if we hit it, if we hit 15,000 users, which could be a lot of money versus, this infrastructure costs, and we can actually then do some realistic calculations of what actual hardware we might need. We might not need to go, we might not need to buy a ESXi host that costs $250,000-$300,000 with 8 GPUs in it. We may just need to either update our existing ones with bigger GPUs, or maybe we can go with the $10,000 GPU instead of the $40,000 GPU, right?
Right.
It's those type of calculations that you can work with, and just go from there. Now, I guess on the other side, there is this study. I can't remember who. It's kind of caused all kinds of shenanigans in the AI scenes, but like this fear that 95% of like AI projects fail or whatever. It's something along those lines. And if you really read into it, maybe like 5% are wildly successful. And you see some of these startups like Anthropic is just like crushing it, right? Like there's a lot of money to be made on here. It's just like, don't work with what you have, try to make progress, but don't go off the deep end one way or the other. I guess that'd be my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the facts out there, between 78% and 90% of most enterprises are reporting that they're either using or are exploring AI today. I mean, that's a huge number. And then you're right, that's the paradox I was talking about. You're seeing those numbers, the high 80s of projects that fail. But I think that comes back to the fact of, they're going into this, hey, there's the hype factor. We've got to get this in, and they're bolting AI on without having a clear vision of how they're going to integrate it. And when I'm out talking to customers, a lot of the failures that we see are disappointments, or there's this expectation that AI is going to be this grand sage. And they're not coming into this thinking, okay, how are we going to integrate this in slowly? How are we going to make use of this? They're thinking, I can throw AI and it's going to solve all my problems. So it's more of a communication and expectation failure than it is a technical failure.
Yeah. And I think too, if you look at some of the cloud first mentalities where everyone was just throwing gobs of money at the public cloud experience, right? Well, now we're basically seeing that kind of fizzle it out, and they're like, well, maybe we shouldn't run everything in the cloud. Maybe we should pull some stuff back. Like, this stuff's expensive. Like, you gotta be tactical about it, right? You gotta what do we want to build, right? Now it's very clear that the developer tooling thing is really easy to process and flow, and that's a thing. But when you start talking about building custom apps and custom things, I think that's really the beauty of having a PaaS that just can get you started with little to no investment, or just your existing investment, and then get a working prototype and hey, we've actually built something that works, and we want to scale it to prod now, and then this is probably what we need. So that type of thing.
Yep. And going back to, the infrastructure and Cote, I'd love to get, what you're hearing from customers, but that is one of the things is when you're looking at the app side, having that centralized infrastructure where you can put some governance around it and centralized control, that's going to be huge, or it should be huge to a lot of enterprises, because they can have very quick, efficient control versus, trying to host this outside on their own. When you've got a PaaS service and something goes wrong, or you're seeing something that is concerning to you, it's much easier and less intrusive to shut that down on a PaaS type infrastructure versus, build your own.
Right. And then Abhishek asked a good question too about zero attention policy or data masking. When you're using some of these policies, you could potentially mask data that's being sent. And there are tools to do that. And we even have webhooks to help do that too within the Gen AI tile, if you wanted to go that route. But there are some cases too. It's you got to make sure your masking is 100% all the time. And then as you start masking things, it's probably going to make the LLMs probably less responsive and less intelligent. And then I think that some of the Broadcom policy is too, there are certain sectors, and we see this in some of these companies, that if any of this data leaks into one of these public AI inference engines, right, these public AI services, they say that they're gonna, everything's gonna be fine. They're not gonna leak any data, but there is no legal recourse if they do.
Yep.
It's just you're screwed, right? So, and I've already seen too. I think even there's something ChatGPT leaked a bunch of logs, or they were the latest thing is about these public companies getting subpoenaed to see what the question chat history is going. And it's then you got another whole legal of that's a whole nother big ball of wax of you're sending who knows what you know, if you have a bunch of employees using the service, what questions they're asking, that could all be like legal retention holds for like lawsuits of like going back to the email, like hold all your email because we got to go send it. It's all getting subpoenaed. Like that's a whole nother like legal
Right.
nightmare,
And
right?
then, you know, to add to the, what would you, genuine FUD, like there's already been settled court cases where certain of these like model people have just been, yeah, you pirated all that stuff. So
Right.
so like
Yeah.
there's already like we have the you know, move fast and break things mentality, Silicon Valley mentality with like, you know, regulations. Like the, you know, one of the reasons historically when all the ride sharing companies were there, a lot of them were successful because they were like, how about I don't follow the regulations? And then eventually they just like, you know, they live longer than the people who want to enforce the regulations, and they change. So it is a space where you have to be a little like cautious about just like I click this slider and that means I'm safe. Right.
Right.
And so to get to what you're asking, Nikki, like I think, and maybe this is in future parts here, but it seems like the primary, so we started off, you got to have a council with some security people and lawyers. And then it seems like the next most important thing after that for platform engineers is whatever you want to call it, you need a gateway. And until you have a gateway, don't do anything. Right. Like, and so, because once you have that control point in place, then you can do anything when anything's the wrong word. But if you don't have a gateway in place, you can do very little except suggest to people what they should do and like put it in your virus scanner. I don't know. Right. But like, like you'd need to have a gateway that's basically like inside our company, everyone goes through our gate, and therefore we can check access and log it and do everything. Because otherwise you can't do anything, right? Like it's otherwise people are going to do whatever they want.
That's a great point, because the next rocket ship that's taken off a part of this is going to be the MCP servers and what they have access to, what they can do. And I agree, you know, completely agree with you. You've got to have almost an API gateway type of mentality when you're talking about MCP servers and what those can access, what you're going, because again, I'm going back different perspective, but agents are going to be a part of this. I don't really care what you say. That's my thought. So how are you going to put governance and compliance around? Now we've got all these agents running. We've got these LLMs that have access to things. How are you going to put governance around that? And nailed it, Cote. You got to have a gateway type mentality here to control that traffic flow and route it.
And I think from an application developer writing the code, that should be straightforward in the sense of like, use this IP address, not that IP address. I mean, I'm simplifying it. And I also like, I haven't really investigated this enough beyond a few talks, but like there's this Goose project that Block, which most people probably know as a Square. And they seem to have put a lot of thought into this notion of having a gateway in place for your users, right? And so, for example, with MCP stuff, at least the last presentation I saw, like it seems like a lot of work, but they kind of were tracking public MCP servers or tools, if you will, that people wanted to use. And they were like, well, why don't we write our own so that we have full control over it? And then also, why don't we have a registry that people get? And then because we actually control the desktop application for using this AI stuff for non-technical and technical people, why don't we make a bundle of it that's just installed on your machine? And so like, that's not exactly a gateway, but it kind of, I mean, it relies on a gateway, but it gets to this thing of, and this is where the PaaS part comes in, at least from R3 history of what a PaaS is like, instead of giving you a bunch of building blocks and hope you assemble it responsibly, how about we kind of pre-assemble some things for you? And like, we have some, I don't know, opinions about like how stuff should be assembled and like what it should look like. And then you can just use that. And then that, along with the gateway and then pre-assembling things, whether it's on the what would you call it? Not the customer, the end user side, like you do with a Goose or whatever, or on the kind of like middleware side, you're basically giving yourself as much control as possible over how AI is consumed. So you could do masking stuff, or you could just shut things down, or you could route to whichever model you actually want to use. And then you're also like making it easier for people to do, because now your developers don't have to think about it unless, as developers like to, they like to overthink things and build their own stuff. But, you know, you're kind of setting it up just like it's easy to use to go to OpenAI and put your credit card in and start using it. it should be that easy, minus having to personally pay for it yourself in like an enterprise context. And that's where, to your question, Nikki, you need a PaaS around that, and to have that in place rather than not.
And yeah, I'm wondering how long it's going to be. You know, one of my favorite parts of Tanzu was the Tanzu application catalog. I love that concept of being able to bring the OSS, have it, you know, validated and verified. I wonder when we're going to start seeing the emergence of that type of mentality around LLMs and around MCP servers, where we do provide, here's that bundle, here's something that we help keep up to date for you, and something that you can use and basically tie in very easily. And that goes back into PaaS. If you're going to have something like that, you got to have a mechanism to efficiently take advantage of it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know 100% about that, but as part of Explorer, we announced Tanzu Platform 10.3, and in said release, the whole services marketplace is getting a big revamp where you could publish your own services. So, like, if you take the work that Findsy and Corby have done with the MCP gateway, with like the app, so Spring Cloud Gateway and SSO tiles, you can then like potentially even wire that into and publish these as services that could get consumed by other teams within the platform. So we're starting to wrap some security around MCP, but you know, that's a spec that's changing like extremely rapidly. So it's, you know, I don't think it's going to be like fully concrete on that quite some time. And then it also very much depends on how the MCP server itself is implemented, right? And how it does auth as well. So a lot of things there to take into account, but I think we have a lot of framework to help wrap those, especially when within the enterprise app space. But yeah, I know we're at our time, but I had a couple more slides, but I don't know if we want to go into it or not. I didn't want to show this. This is a fun slide, but
well, as you know,
the llamas point fingers at each other. But yeah,
as you know, Nick, I'm here to steal precious content from you so I can present it. So you can can go as long as you want to, as far as I'm concerned.
I got to say, I love your slide game, Nick. I think people should take lessons from you. I love the simple slides that you talk to instead of having it just cram full of words and stuff that takes attention away from you while you're trying to speak. So kudos on your slide game.
You know, if I could parenthetically give one of my professional public speaking tips here, it's also good to have not lots of words, have just a picture, because then your audience doesn't know that you're just totally making it up as you go along.
Yeah.
One of the best talks I ever saw, the guy got up there, he just had a picture of a baseball. That was the only slide. It was a 45-minute talk, just a picture of a baseball. And at the end, as he was doing Q&A, people asked him, okay, we've been sitting here waiting patiently. What's with the baseball? Nothing. But it held your attention and you stayed here the whole time, didn't you?
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna talk about the llamas slide for 45 minutes, and in the prompt I'm like, use the Spider-Man meme to have all the inference engines pointing at each other. And I think it did a pretty good job. But if we I think how we run the model is important. So we talked about how to get it and how to make the most of what we have, but then how do you make it most efficient? And we work a lot with Llama and VLM. And I guess I'll look at some of my words here in the next slide. But yeah, VLM, like if you're looking for raw performance, it's going to be your fastest engine. It can do scale across multi GPU well across a single node. It's very complex. It's very picky on hardware, so they will deprecate generations of hardware before some of these other providers do. So if you're in the VLM space, you got some high end GPUs. But you're going to have that's probably where you get to I want to run this app with 15,000 users and run a bunch of requests on it. You're going to want to run that with VLM. Now Llama, right, is really just like a Docker-like wrapper on top of Llama CPP, and Llama CPP is very popular in the just open source local as well as in Llama and the hobbyist type scene. But it's we chose Llama because it was really easy to get started. It had really good CPU support going forward, and that's kind of we brought it in to help run these models on CPUs. And it's a lot more forgiving, so you can run it on really old hardware, really old GPUs, and still get some really good performance as well, and kind of make the most of it. So that's just kind of keep those different engines in mind. There's probably 10 more happening. I know there's a lot of different forks of Llama CPP. This is a space that's going to constantly evolve, but knowing how to use these different engines is key. We wrap them pretty well within Ops Manager and kind of give you those default values that you want to see. And Deshaun pointed out in the talk that you can run Llama on a Raspberry Pi, and that is true. However, if you want to run like an agentic workload on Olama, you're probably going to run. You're going to get into your like context window size. You're going to probably want to run more than just a Raspberry Pi, because you're going to run a lot of. You need a lot of RAM for inference, VRAM for the context size and stuff like that. So we can get into some of that now as we get the engines down. The hardest part really, and I meant to look this up, but there's even some tooling being created to help calculate how much hardware you need to run some model. And I'll have to maybe find that too as well. But if we go to the next, let's see, right? So
to extend our time even more, I have a little question here. So so when you look at both as a platform engineer running AI services, Nick, like when you look at both the model selection, I barely understand what an inference engine is, but let's just pretend I do. And then your inference engines, like when I hear people talk about them, it sounds like the people making them are not product managing. Well, maybe they're not product managing, but they're definitely not product managing for like an enterprise where the enterprise the enterprise is basically like, I don't want to mess around with a bunch of stuff. I got stuff to do. Right. Yes. And so like if I have to go do a bunch of research to figure out the right kind of setting, that's not very enterprisey. Right. And, this evolves over time. Like, I don't know it because I'm more of an application layer person, but I'm pretty sure most platform engineers like would know how to set up Postgres. Like you just sort of like, and it's also been it's been product managed over time to just be easy. But I guess what I'm asking is confirmation of my sense is that there is very little enterprise packaging for ease of use when it comes to any of this stuff. And so like, if you expect it to be easy, like selecting a message queuing system or even a JavaScript UI framework, this is just a whole other world of like fiddliness, because the culture of people who make it is not enterprisey. And so things are not packaged up that way at all.
Yeah. And if we dovetail that into like Deshaun's comment in the slide, yes, you can go install like Olama on your machine and like run a model or run whatever will fit on your machine. It'll probably be slow unless you have like, a super duper workstation or like one of these crazy new Macs I bought. But if you don't know how to tweak it, like you're going to get to this slide here where like, I'm like talking to it and then it keeps like forgetting what you said, or like I'm trying to pass it a bunch of documents and like, it just like forgets halfway, hallucinates. That's because your context window, like even by default, like with Olama is only set to like 8,000, 8,192. So like, but like these models can run, 128K or a million tokens of a context. Like the full context window is much larger, but they shrink it down because it won't typically fit on most machines. So that's kind of where you get some performance scale issues. And then like, you're not going to be running VLM on your laptop either. Like there's just too many.
And do you think this
there either?
Like tuning is the wrong word to use in this context because it means something else. But do you think this configuring, right? Like I forget all the things you have. You got a chaos and a temperature and a context window size and all this nonsense. If you log into that stuff. And is that like when you two are thinking on your own, but also like when you're talking with people, is that the platform engineer's responsibility or a data scientist's responsibility, or do you open that up so the application developers, it's their responsibility? Like who's in charge of like, if I go to Midjourney and I can do a command line interface and there's like 50 different like dash options I can pass it, who's in charge of that? Right? Like how does that pan out?
Yeah, in the Tanzu land, right, within the tile, these a lot of these knobs are going to be the responsibility of the platform engineer, because they're the ones running the software and maintaining it. And we our whole point is to make it easy for them and to help kind of give them like, you should do this, or like here's all these settings you need to do, because otherwise you probably won't know to set them, right?
Right.
there are some knobs that you can tune in your app code, like in your prompts, like you can like temperature or something you can send, and so
Right,
some of
right,
it's
right.
on the developer like responsibility of like, hey, like you might need to tweak the prompt because maybe you're saying something, or like another use case is that I was working with Gregory Green, and we'll have to get him back on the show to work on this export talk that we did, but he was using Llama 3.3 for something with his models. He built this whole retail app suite to demo like the full suite of Tanzu platform, the data suite. But I was like, hey, we got this new model. Like, you should hook it up to this and see what happens. And it was a reasoning model. It was Quen, and his prompt like was not written in a way to like expect the whole like think block to come back, and like it was blowing up his app code. So it's like it's on both sides of like, hey, this is this type of model. It's a reasoning model where it's going to come back and like it's going to
You have a
respond
bunch of
differently
stuff.
to your prompts, right? So like you gotta know like what type of model you're talking to, what specific model, and you gotta write your code in a way that makes sense. And then it's the platform team's to like job to advertise.
Right,
So like
right.
this is a reasoning model. It supports tooling. It supports chat. This model only does embedding. So like this is what you're gonna use for your embedding. This model is a smaller model, so it's great for like a bunch of smaller requests. But if you want
So
something that's more, like,
in the
yeah,
same way that the platform engineer is thinking about, or should be thinking about, or we would like them to be thinking about,
right.
the usability of the services they're providing. In this
Mhm.
area, they probably would be thinking through like, let's imagine that Cote is my end user who doesn't know anything, and so
Right.
I'm basically just going to have like, this one is really good, this one's okay, and this one's smaller. Like I
Yeah.
just want to know the t-shirt sizes and stuff, and you could kind of
Yes.
explain what the various things you have. Like this is a chain of thought one. This one has access to tools. So
Hmm.
you've got to the platform engineer has to put some thought into like, well, I can't just give them that page that Hugging Face does. Where like I go look at Hugging Face and I'm like, is this in English? I don't understand what
Hmm.
is being said here.
Right.
And
Right. Yeah.
so like you've got to think about like how you're explaining the service that you're providing, and then maybe
Mhm.
when it comes to, as you say, the knobs, like I could imagine that when it came down to who's responsible for which knob, that maybe there's a divide. Like if the knob involves resource consumption, the
Mhm.
platform engineer is probably in charge of that knob because they're the ones who suffer if it goes bad, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
but if
I,
the knob is in charge of style or vibe, like temperature, then maybe the developer can have access to it because they're the ones who care about that. Like that's not really going to cause your platform to be flaky. It's just the
Yeah, I
way that
think
they're
you're
using it.
getting into the concept of blended teams again. I think if you
Mm.
try to do all of this with just the platform engineer, you're going to fail, right? You're going to see some failures. I think ultimately it's the platform engineer that actually turns the knob, but
Mhm.
really discussing which knobs and what they're out there, it's going to be part developer. It's going to be part, the data scientist. It's going to be part hardware. Can I tune this to a point that overcomes my hardware? Well, you're going to have that stuff. So I think it comes into a blended team. It almost, to be honest with you, comes back into that kind of IT council in
Mhm.
a way, because
Right.
if only one person does it, then you're not going to get that 80% of where it fits most use cases. You're going to have to talk to different people and collectively come up with how are we going to tune this thing or
Yeah,
configure.
yeah, yeah.
And I attempted here to do some of this. Now that the naming is a little confusing, right? But like, I was using this Destral coder. So like, hey, this model, and I need to provide better nomenclature here. But like, it's for the vibe coding, and that's what I was doing. If you saw me at Explore, I was doing. I made I vibe coded live to build a website to show pictures of that cat that was modeling me earlier. And then and some of these other things I did, like I made a more descriptive plan of like gives you access to this Quen model. It supports chat and tool calling. It's got a certain this is the context window, and it runs on a GPU worker, that type of thing. So like we can add and describe the functionality of the plan to the developer in many different ways. And I think too, even if we go on the example with Gregory Green, is that so this application suite had some back end jobs that he could run simulate like we're making like we're going to push 1,000 orders to the system, and like we're doing this in dry runs before Explorer, and he's like, go and like submit like 3,000 or 4,000 orders to the system because then he wanted to like fill up the RabbitMQ queues and show RabbitMQ and like auto scaling everything. And then we started getting errors, and I was like, well, you just sent like 3,000 requests to this LLM, and it's a little angry right now. And like I like, and before he was doing some testing, and I was working in my lab, and I hear one of my servers going like really loud. I was like, well, someone's using this like really good today, right? Like, and then he's, oh yeah, I've been doing this. Like, oh that model was run on that server that was screaming like a banshee for like half the day. I get it now. So, but that was even like a 70 billion model. So this Llama 3.3. Maybe we could probably like, and it was doing sentiment analysis and a couple other promotional messaging based on like the orders coming in. So it's like, hey, this user is buying peanut butter. Let's recommend like jelly, and then like let's do sentiment analysis on the user review. So those are all like maybe smaller requests. So we could probably got a much smaller model in there in place and process this request much faster because you didn't really need a 70 billion parameter model to process that, right? So it's just certain things that we learned, but we didn't have a whole lot of time to fix that before Explorer. So we were like, let's just submit 5 orders on stage instead of 1,000, right? So that worked out well either way. But yeah,
that's hilarious. I can just imagine that conversation. Gregory, what are you doing, man? You just raised the temperature in my house 3 degrees. Let's get off a little bit.
Yeah. So
that seems like another good reason why you need a gateway first off is because in theory you could throttle it, right? Like I don't know how technologically, I don't know how this would actually work, but it seems like you could intercept calls and be like, this is not going to go well, and just like shut it down. And because I guess because the public services do that because they make money, and if you said like, I don't want to have unlimited token usage, they'll just like shut you down and tell you that like you can no longer do it, especially on the free tier. So it's definitely possible to predict what's going to happen, but you need a gateway in order to do that.
Exactly. Okay.
It sounds like someone's doing some big inference analysis in the background there, running your fans really fast.
I don't think it's coming through mine. I hear it too, unless it's.
Oh no, that would be me. That's my water system.
Oh, okay.
Making water.
Yeah. You're making water over there, Nikki? That's cool.
That's
right. All right. So
clean water. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I had, we can go to it or not, was talking about how to like sort through all these different quantization sizes for models, but I know we're like pretty well past our time, so I'll leave that up to you if you want to get into it.
I think we just broke a record. This is our longest show in 68 episodes, 67.
1 minute 18, 1 hour, 1 minute, 1 hour, 18 minutes and 20 seconds. So yeah. So
and look,
how about what to set a high bar for the record here? So what about the whole like data access side? Like what are people doing out there with that? Because certainly like in all of our PowerPoint slides and blog posts, we're all like, data's a big deal, which seems intuitively true. So like, what are the platform engineer people doing with that, or how does that fit into things? Whose responsibility is all of that?
Yeah. So, I mean, data's it's kind of like using it where you have, right? So like you may already have a data warehouse or a data lake house, or large databases. So we have, Tanzu data flow to kind of help create jobs and like, pull data in and out of some of these data warehouses to help, help do something useful with all this data that everyone's been collecting for the past decade or two of like, we're going to store everything. And one day, maybe somebody will be able to use it for something. And maybe these LLMs now can start using these, this doing something with all these petabytes of data, all these enterprises have stored. And then also like, there's just the general purpose of like, you got like Postgres and you do PG vector, embedding type support. So that flow is going to go in there as well. So if you have a lot of people I see, it will take like production databases and mirror them. So like you may have like your production MySQL database, and then they'll write a job to mirror that into the Postgres database and then generate embeddings off of it. So it's like the embedding database is more like a secondary, like it's not like impacting the the critical flow of like, e-commerce sales, but then that embedding database would be called to do like the sentiment analysis, so to speak.
Right.
Of,
So
right,
if I were to, as they say, executize it, tell me if this is right. It seems like there's 3 points. One, okay, so you need all this. You gotta have data for your artificial intelligence. This is how executives talk. And so we got all that data. Now, of course, your data has to be like cleaned up enough to be usable, which is one of the hopes of AI, is it doesn't actually have to be that clean. It can be sloppy and you can sort through stuff. But so you got the data, like we got that. Now that there's 2 other things. One, the best way for generative AI to consume large amounts of data is if it's vectorized. And that's another thing I barely understand. But basically what that means is you have to go to your data and you've got to spend some time, not you get some computers to do it. The computers have to spend some time to scan across all your data and generate all these embeddings. And then your embeddings are, you got some embedding model, some nonsense with math and nerds. And then you generate all these embeddings and you got another chunk of data. And then the embeddings are basically like the language that the AIs speak. So then these embeddings have to be accessible by anytime you're a model is talking with your data. So, a very common like application thing is like, I got salespeople, and whenever the salespeople talk to a customer, I want to have like a little AI buddy that's like, hey, suggest this to them and we'll make more money. Right. Like, and so in that case, I've had to generate embeddings of all this, our product catalog, the information we have about the customer, maybe some recent metrics about pricings of things. So I've got those embeddings, and then we can go to town with that. Now that is something slightly different, unless you've been doing a bunch of machine learning, than just like I've got a relational database. So now we've got this new step. We got to generate embeddings and maintain them. And then, so that part, is that like what a platform engineer does? Or does someone else maintain this like big bucket of embedding somewhere?
But in the case of, our Cloud Foundry ecosystem friends and Tanzu Platform friends, the platform engineering team, or the side data platform engineering team, will be responsible for maintaining those databases and backing them up. And the normal, just like, I have a database, I need like enterprise IT ops on that database.
Yeah.
Now, right, and then it's great because like the platform does a lot of that already. We can like automate backups, you can automate upgrades, you can get the whole provisioning flow up and down. CF bind service, CF create service, that type of flow. So that's easy. That's the traditional IT ops is just already kind of taken care of as part of the platform side. Now, typically then the developers, like the maintainers of the application, are the ones who keep track of like the data flow of like, all right, we're pulling from, corp database 100 to get these 10 tables. And then, we have our jobs to run, and then we need to make sure that the embedding job runs every night and then updates. And those are all just jobs and apps and flows written to move stuff.
Data scientists to really kind of fine tune, because when we're talking about embeddings, right, that's kind of like, and I'm going to blow some young people's minds, it's like the Dewey Decimal System for AI to go find stuff. But aren't you using wouldn't the data scientists kind of be responsible for helping fine tune that data model and optimize it?
It could be, yeah. If you have a data scientist team that have worked in this flow, they can do that. But we also see like Spring developers or just normal enterprise developers doing this too, where because these local models are so powerful, you don't necessarily have to like fine tune them per se. Right now, some people have done the fine tuning and like taken the data scientist role set, and then they'll fine tune it with some subset of their data and like make a new variation of the model. But honestly, in most cases, people aren't really fine tuning unless they just have like a lot of gear, right?
So what I'm feeling out on this, well, the third thing is that, like, just to make it very crude, you could also we'll just use MCP. You could also have an MCP server that just generates SQL code and queries a database and figures out what to do with what it returns, right? Nothing fancy there. You got all your SQL injection security concerns, sure, but you can solve, or that's something that you can work on. But so we put all of that together, and kind of, it's just like managing any type of data source that you have. Sure, you've got to generate this new type of I prefer the Library of Congress cataloging system. I feel it's more precise, but you've got to generate this Dewey Decimal system thing, and that's something new, and it's a little unclear who's in charge of it, but it's not like a big deal. Like it's something that like you can take care of and kind of solve and figure out. And the only thing that maybe is an interesting not the only thing, but one interesting detail there might be that the platform engineer might be kind of a pass-through in the sense that they're providing embeddings as a service. And on the one end, you have the consumer of it, the customer, the developer, who's like, I need some embeddings for, what did you call it? Corporate database 100, right? And the platform engineer is like, sounds cool. And then they go talk to your data scientists or embedding people who figure out what that means. But like, it's not necessarily the platform engineer who's like, now I got to generate embeddings. They just have to provide that as somehow host it and provide access to it or something.
Well, let me throw this at you. This is one of the things that I love. I've talked about this a lot. This is one of the things I love about Cloud Foundry is, okay, we've got this big data lake. We want an application that wants to go and run against it, but we don't need to run against that whole data lake. One of the things that I love about Cloud Foundry is this ability to use data as a microservice, right? We can spin up Postgres database. We support vector in that. And I keep using the word we, I'm no longer we, but Cloud Foundry supports vectoring in that Postgres database. So now I can take a subset of that data lake that's specific to my application. It's tuned to my application because now that data process is much smaller. It should be more efficient. And then we don't run necessarily the risk of polluting the data lake. So you can use things like Spring Cloud Data Flow to do the back and forth between the data lake and my personalized application database that's running on Cloud Foundry. And then all my AI should theoretically be more efficient and effective. Smaller data set, personalized, it's safer. And if something does go wrong, I'm killing off my little microservice database. I'm not killing, or affecting the whole data lake.
Right.
I think that's a huge plus on this side.
Right. And so maybe that in the other thing to add to my little hand wavy thing here is, and this, you always have the principle of garbage in, garbage out in these things. But if you already have a pretty good data access strategy, like how you're accessing data, then you probably don't have to do that much more. You just need to handle this embedding thing. And then, make sure it all fits together. But like, on the other hand, if you have an ad hoc method of accessing corporate database 1 to 500, this is not going to go well for you. Right. You need to have that in place first, or you're just like, you can't one off that. You need to already have all your data lake houses and your data access set up and policy around it. So you can easily just add stuff on.
Yep. Well, and like Deshaun stated, he came out and said, yeah, Spring developers are getting more of that type of work to do that embedding. So, I think that running these models, running these applications on something like Cloud Foundry, using that split data, that we're talking about, treating data as a microservice, it allows the developer to fine tune a little bit more on what they're doing if they're able to go in. So the platform engineers and providing the models, they're providing, what can be used here. And then the developer can go in and say, okay, for my particular data set, I want to tune it this way. And they can talk to a data scientist that they need to. The other developer can use the same data, but in a different way. That's, really kind of consistent with the application they're wanting to build. That provides a lot of power there and optionality.
All right, I've got one more topic, and then I think we can break. But
cool,
we're going for that. We're setting the record for longest show. We're
probably for a long time. If we ever get to that point where we don't have a topic, we can just take this and split it in half and make two shows of this.
Part 1, part 2. Yeah. I may zoom in a little bit more. Maybe. Well, I guess it's off to the right. Can you? I'll zoom in way more, and then I'm zooming in. I was zooming in the wrong browser.
Six to say you're not zooming at all, buddy.
Yeah, I was zooming StreamYard in, not the.
While you're zooming, man, thanks to everybody out there that is staying with us through an extra 30 minutes here.
Yeah.
We must be hitting a nerve.
So I'm not quite sure how. Is this readable on the screen?
I can read it. Yep.
Okay. So I'm on the Hugging Face. This is kind of like we talked about it before, but it's like the GitHub for the models, right? The open source models. Unsloth is a model like kind of like reproducer where they'll take these models and they'll do they'll fine tune them, they'll make some enhancements to them. They also have like a pretty popular way to do that fine tuning if you're in that space with little resources. So it's pretty popular in that scene. But they also are producers of what we call GGUF files, because most likely these models are released in safe tensor format, and if you want to run it like in an air gapped scenario with like Llama CBP or a Llama, you're going to need a GGUF file. You can make that yourself. It can be a little bit of a fine art to do well. Unsloth does things pretty well from for the most part. So I'll pick some models from them as well. But I've just used this as an example of like, we'll go back to that slide of like take the LLM and put it on the GPU. It's like we have this quantization to deal with, right? So the full format here, if we look 16-bit BF16, that model uncompressed, right? It's 47.2 gigs without context window or KV cache. So you're already looking at a pretty large card to run that without any kind of quantization. And now if you look at the quantization, it's really kind of like compression. So we go from 16-bit to 8-bit, and like, the size kind of reduces in half to some degree. And you keep going down those lines. So I think in that, I didn't mean to, I definitely don't want to download this again. It's not small. Oh, come on, computer. No, I'm not using my new computer right now.
It's an example of many things we've been talking about. You're just one click away from something going wrong.
Yes. But yeah, if we look at, I was running I think the Q5K XL bit, so the 5-bit. So 4-bit and up is usually good. If you do a base Olama pull, you're probably going to get something called like a Q4KM quant. But the lower you go, the smaller the model gets, but the less it like you start to get that compression accuracy issues. So the higher you want to go as high as possible, just because you'll get the most response. But this kind of shows you how you can fit it in smaller gear without needing like an H100 or whatever to run it. But if you look at the Q5KXL, I was able to run that, I think, pretty close to on a card with 24 gig of VRAM once I added the full context size and KV cache. But it's going to take 16.8 gig all the way, and then I think it was pretty close to that if I set in a full context of 128K and the KV cache, I did some quantization there to get it down. But I was able to fit it on a card with 24 gig of VRAM. That's like a RTX 3090, or that is that NVIDIA L4 data center card of like 24 gigs of VRAM. So you can get it in a smaller card, and you can kind of get started there as well. So that's just something to cover. Like, this is, to me, some of the most confusing things when you're talking about running and hosting models. You see all these bits and you're like, quantization, and you're like, what does any of this mean? And you try to load it and you're like, why is it using, way more than the model size? Because then you got to figure out all the context windows and all that jazz. And I guess to dovetail that into like how we set it up within the platform, we've kind of figured that out for you and help give you some guardrails. And if I go to that model config, I click around here, and then, I think this is one of those that so, we'll see, we can show what capabilities to advertise. Keep alives are good too. These are like tweaks for Olama.
I can't see, Nick. Yeah, that's too small.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So maybe is this readable now?
Yep.
So we have, these are all kind of settings and environment variables behind the scenes, but you can tell how much parallel requests to process. This is all about kind of fine tuning it within your space, but like set the context at the max size of the model, right? So you get, that's important too. So like when you're doing the vibe coding, like you want a lot of context, as much context as possible. So you have smaller context, it's just gonna, like, if you're trying to use like C-line with this, it'll just go into like infinite loop of just like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I'm going to try to read your file system 100 times in a row, because I start to process it, then I forget what I'm doing. So that's why you've probably seen too in your space, models with a super large context being super important. quantizing the KV cache as well to like help fit that as well. So you can do that. The KV cache is kind of like a bullet point cache, high speed cache in front of the context window to help response time. So you can make that larger, smaller, and obviously the higher the quantization level or the less compression, the more accurate it'll be as well. So it's all about kind of fitting in what you have. Flash attention is also about improving. Oh, I don't want to do that. Improving how memory is stored within the system, and it makes for optimizing use the most of what you have, and it makes for faster inference. You can see here too. I'm just pulling directly from Hugging Face here, but this is the air gap model of where like give it your URL where you're hosting your model, will pull it, and then provide a model file configuration. This seems like a lot, but we kind of will help guide you through that. These are all these different things to run these at scale, and I'm actually running this across two A4000s here, but I think I was using about 25 or 26 gig of those. And you can tell, these are all, if you've seen Cloud Foundry and Tanzu Platform space, these are all like availability zone, this type. This is just talking about this worker. So like, these are all things to consider when we're trying to run these at scale.
Go back to your unsloth for 1 minute and just explain out for the audience one more thing. So when we look at that, we see like your Q4 KM, you got 14.3 gigs versus the XL. So these are all in the 4-bit. What's the real difference other than just size between like the iQ4NL and the Q4 KML?
Yeah. So on the 4-bit side, like especially the unsloth folks, they will publish a lot of different types. Now let's see, they have it. Let's see, one of them maybe Bartowski. Like some of them, they'll give you like a table chart breakdown. Like some of these things on the Q4 side will like they may be optimized for ARM chips, or they may be optimized for whatever type of processor. So like that's where you get so many different configurations in the 4-bit space. But as you kind of go up, I think they don't do as many optimizations there, because I think as you get lower and lower, they're trying to like, all right, let's no one's gonna run in this 8-bit on this small ARM thing. So let's we're not gonna futz with that at the higher bit rates, so to speak. But as you get the lower, that's where you start to get some of the more obscure, like this has been optimized for this specific processor if you're only doing like CPU based workloads or whatever, that type of thing. That's my understanding. I'd have to, maybe if we go back here, I think Bartowski had one. He may document. He's another well-known model producer. He may document what those mean, at least within his let's see. That's a great question. Yeah, so he'll start to provide some like description of like like full weights, full size, extremely like the Q8 high quality, generally unneeded but max available quant. And then like as you get down, like, oh well, you can do the Q6K, like very high quality, near perfect, recommended, right? But like,
gotcha.
Like the quality is still good, but you're saving a lot of space. Let's see here. Yeah, so we're starting to get in these weird Q sizes here, like legacy format, but with improved tokens for Apple Silicon. So like this Q4 one's for Apple Silicon, looks like the ARM apples, or legacy format offers online repacking for ARM and AVX CPU inference.
Cool.
So,
well, there you go. Yeah. There's your decoder ring for what the quantizations mean.
Yeah. So as it goes down and down, it gets more verbose of like, hey, like this is getting worse and worse quality, very low quality, but surprisingly usable. So it's like, hey, like, all these different things. So that's kind of where we are to help that decoder ring. But yeah, a lot of this stuff changes. Well, it's hard to keep track of, but this is just some of the stuff I've kind of picked up.
Gotcha.
In this space.
So if I were to summarize a lot of this, it seems like it'd be nice to have a third, because 3 is better than 2 when it comes to stuff. But like, there's 2 main things. One, you're resource constrained about all of this stuff. And that includes like, even if you're paying for public services, you could be paying a lot, so you're constrained in that way. Or if you're doing it on your own, you're just constrained by the hardware that you can have. And then 2, to put it in very common talk, it's very confusing in the sense of like, you've got all these different models, and then within the different models, you've got different models, and then you've got the knobs that you can turn for the models. and so forth and so on. And so like a lot of what you're doing as a platform engineer is managing a scarce resource, and then also trying to clarify like all this like blizzard of stuff out there, right? And just simplify it as much as possible.
Exactly. And that's why you need a platform to help give you that story.
Because it feels like a lot of the other things that you worry about are they're not necessarily easy, but they're things that are well known how to do, and most people are capable of doing them. Like setting the policy. It's you just go to the security people and the legal people, and it's more or less straightforward at this point, right? Like they kind of know what they're solving for. And then if you look at the data space, it's like this is not an entirely new way of thinking about and consuming data. It's kind of the same thing. And so like that's not a difficult part. You just have to do it. But these other things are like different than, I don't know, they're the major concerns at the moment of a platform engineering get involved here. Like analogously, it would be like if instead of there being, let's say, 4 major on-premises databases, there were 500. And like you were always trying to sort through like which databases you would want to use. But in this case, we've got more than 500 different combinations of models and inference engines that you would want to use. So you got to figure that out.
And I think the record or the number on Hugging Face is they've broken 2 million models already. So yeah, there's a lot of options out there. Yeah. For sure. But yeah, I think your analysis, your Cote's executive analysis is spot on. So very good.
Well, great. That's a good way to end the week then.
Yeah. We're coming into an hour and 45 minutes. Unfortunately, I'm fixing to have to jump to another podcast, so I'm going to have to blow out. But Cote, any last thoughts from you on before we call this marathon to a close?
Yeah, well, I think it's great, and like the thing. The thing that like Nick and other people have been doing that kind of gets to some of the stuff we're saying is they're actually doing it instead of kind of like theorizing or worrying about things like maybe a center of excellence would. They're sort of like learning what all the things a platform engineer and other people need to do by like going out there and as Nick knows, there's lots of application. Well, there's a handful, which is a lot for him, of applications that run on his platform all the time. And so he's like learning what it looks like by doing it. And I think that's what I always encourage people to do at every layer, from the executive to the infrastructure to the application developer layer, is like what you should do is before you have questions about this, actually like find one application or one thing and just do it completely end to end to not only understand how to do it, but you were asking this earlier, Nikki, like to also like de-hypify your expectations, to like, not that it's less than, but to understand what you can do with this technology so that you're not disappointed when it doesn't, like, probably, sliced bread might still be the best thing. We'll see if it exceeds sliced bread or not, but like, understand what it's capable of and what it does. But in order to do that, you've got to actually like do it. So figure out a way to like all the way, what do we used to call it, a steel thread or whatever, do something all the way end to end. And that's the way you're going to learn about this stuff.
Yeah, I think I could do a whole show just on that topic of de-hypifying. Is that a word, de-hypifying? It is now. De-hypifying AI and expectations here. I think I've got a lot of really strong opinions on that. I think we could talk all day about that. But
you could do a realistification workshop.
There you go. I like the real. Yeah, I'm not even going to try to say that. I'll get tongue-tied.
Yeah.
The one thing I do want to note, the one of the awesome parts of this is watching, Nick is becoming like the Dan Vega or the Deshaun Carter in the Java world, but he's becoming that for the LLMs. I learn, I know a lot about AI, but every time I come on the show and Nick really gets to talking, I learn something new about LLMs. So kudos, Nick. Man, keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks. I appreciate that. And thanks to Abhishek too for great to see you back, and Deshaun and Keith and everyone else watching the show.
Yeah, happy
commentary.
Happy
Thank you.
Day. Happy Teachers Day, Abhishek.
Yeah, and with that, it's the full like and subscribe. Don't forget to pillow time, right? Everybody should do that. Get those notification bells. But without further ado, I I think I'm out of stuff to talk about right now. So I'm low on coffee. I need more coffee to start talking some more. So I guess
This
we
is
should
what
probably
happens
sign
when you
off,
wake
right?
me up at 7:00 in the morning.
Yeah. Thank you for waking up early for everyone.
That
here.
was nice of you for my
Yes.
hours. Well,
Yes.
thanks for having me. Toodaloo.
Enjoy.
All right.
And it's probably very different for us, Cote. You said summer's ending. For me, that's a big thing, but I imagine that's a very different aspect for you where you live. So stay bundled, stay warm.
Yeah, and enjoy being the rain. That's what I got ahead of me.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll do the countdown. 3, 2, 1. See ya.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.